Hey guys, it is Lee from straightwoo.com here. Wanted to say a few words about the new moon in Capricorn. Most of you are accustomed to my new moon and full moon posts, which I send out every couple weeks when the new moon and full moon are happening, and whenever my creative muse is cooperating. So not always super on time or in advance, but hopefully at the right time. This go round, I've got a lot of change happening in my life. I am moving house and moving country within the next 4 or 5 days, which is even why this room has a bit of an extra echo. It's not usually like that. It's just very empty because we've already started moving out. But I didn't want to miss the new moon in Capricorn because I feel like it's one to watch in terms of a new moon. And I think there's a few reasons why it's important. And I really urge you to think about it and to reflect on some of the things that might come up in this video. New moons typically start a new cycle. They're at a point where we can look back to what's just been closing off and where we have this great new empty but rich void to fill with new experience moving forward. So it's a great time to look forward while at the same time kind of having, part of our consciousness shifted back. And I think this is specifically going to be about Saturn. And what has Saturn been doing in your chart for the last couple of years? What's up for the next few years? Important things about the new moon in Capricorn. Of course, it's the first new moon of 2018. That's reason enough. Secondly, it is the opener for eclipse season. The new moon in Capricorn right now starts a lunation cycle that will wax to fullness with the full moon lunar eclipse, because eclipses happen when the full moon or a new moon is near enough to the nodes, and that's what creates an eclipse event. So the full moon stroke lunar eclipse in Leo, January 31st, is part of this cycle that's opening up now. So the new moon in Capricorn brings us into the new year, hits the restart button, brings us into eclipse season, and most importantly, it brings us into the heart of what Saturn in Capricorn has in store for us, the lesson that we need to know and to navigate at the deepest level. Reason being is that the new moon in Capricorn, and Capricorn is a sign ruled by the planet Saturn, is the first new or full moon that we've had in Capricorn or featuring Saturn or ruled by Saturn since Saturn changed signs. Saturn changed signs right around December 20th or 21st from Sagittarius, where he's been more or less since, we could say, the middle to autumn part of 2015, and now he's going to be in Capricorn until well into 2020. So this is a big paradigm shift. Lessons are changing. We've closed off one cycle with Saturn in Sagittarius, and we've gotten to a point of understanding or learning. And now we start anew. But now we're in Capricorn. We're in a different part of our chart. There are new things to confront, and there are new things that need to be unraveled within us. Saturn is a really slow-moving planet, and it's important to understand that, because sometimes he's called the Lord of Karma, and yes, Saturn transits are not always they're certainly not fun times, but they are absolutely integral to changing who we are as people and concretizing the most fundamental aspects of our personality that inform how we work, how we show up in the world, how we show up in our relationships, and all of the different structures that inform those systems. And since he's slow moving, it shouldn't be a surprise that a lot of his key themes are in fact things that you can only do over time slowly. Mastery, integrity, discipline, work ethic. All of these kinds of things are part of Saturn's world. And they're things that are tied innately and very deeply to two things one cannot rush: time and experience. And that's why, for me, I'll tell you what I first thought when I was looking at the new moon in Capricorn chart. Basically, we've got tons of planets in Capricorn anyway. This chart has 6 or 7, if you're including true Black Moon Lilith, 7 points or planets in Capricorn. That's a lot. And something I learned from Susan Miller's website earlier this week is that we haven't had that many planets in a sign since 2000, when we had 7 planets in Taurus. So this is kind of a wild event anyway, kind of interesting. But what I sensed in the chart is there's this chunk, this absolute rigid, tight, strong, not going anywhere chunk of Capricorn coming up against a very sharp square aspect. And if you're newer to astrology, a square is kind of a harsh aspect that creates tension, but that can also be tension that eventually manifests change. It's something that we have to react to. It's very reactive as an aspect. So there's this solid chunk in Capricorn coming up against this kind of blazing thing happening between Uranus in Aries and Pallas Athena in Aries. So I had a vision in my mind about this kind of like old guard, which is Capricorn. Because Capricorn is more conservative, more traditional. Saturn is very, very at home in Capricorn. Capricorn respects structures. It respects time and experience and integrity and mastery. And there's something I've always really liked about Capricorn anyway. Frankly, I'm an Aries, so I'm like Rushmaster 2000. But Capricorn looks at where it wants to go, and with a huge amount of humility says, it kind of says like a silent prayer, like, I think I can get there. I just need to put one foot in front of the other foot. I need to do the work. I need to show up. I need to be the kind of person in action that eventually ends up there. Whereas other signs might rush to the top or think they're owed it or feel very entitled. And I won't name those signs, but I can name Aries. I'm Aries, and Aries is one of the ones. Aries would say like, "I'm great. I just need to show people." Whereas Capricorn has more of a break that's like, "I think I can do it. I just need to work really hard." It's a very different dynamic. So we've got this chunk in Capricorn up against this kind of twosome, but dynamic, fiery, spirited twosome in Aries. So my sense was like old guard versus young and hungry rabble-rousers. And I've written that phrase somewhere in one of my transit readings just now. And I have to say, ultimately, I think the chart says that old guard wins. Experience wins, time wins, mastery wins, integrity wins. And I think wherever Capricorn rules or is situated in your chart is a place where you are being called to not just, it's in some ways it's initiation into Saturn and Capricorn, but you're being called to explore mastery, integrity, and what those mean to you, and how you're going to show up and be present in that space. So for example, if Saturn was ruling your 4th house, which is home, parents, childhood, physical homes, I also think about the 4th house as being one's foundation. It's like the root of the chart. It's quite often called the root of the chart. If Saturn is owning that space for you, Capricorn's there, I would say it's very important for you to get in mastery, integrity, alignment with yourself as your personal foundation, so you can bring that into the 10th house, the opposite house, as an external reality. If Saturn was to enter, for example, your 6th house, work and service, I'd say it'd be very, very important for you to right now sit down, pause, and think about your work. Think about your service. Think about how you're showing up for other people. And where is there like an itchy bit about mastery, about integrity? These planets in Aries, Uranus and Pallas, are very bright, very clever, very fiery, again, spirited. They move fast. They don't stop. I'm always thinking of like Monopoly. They don't stop at, what is it? Thou shalt not pass go. That's it. They're like already around the board. These are very fast moving planets that are like not slowing down for anybody, not interested in what you're doing. They want to fight and like, take a risk, be bold, be courageous, kind of like shove their way through life and cut their own path through things. But some rules exist for a reason. Time, of course, heals all wounds, but it's the ultimate teacher as well. and mastery, real mastery, which is what Capricorn wants to do. It wants to see a structure and master it. Mastery comes when time and experience are married to one another. You can't rush it. You absolutely can't rush it. It's a it's a slow unfolding process. Hence why Saturn in Capricorn is such a beautiful, profound place to learn this lesson and to initiate it within ourselves. So these are some of my thoughts about Saturn in Capricorn, the new moon in Capricorn. I think what's really here is this challenge between old guard and new, young and old. We could say conservative and progressive. We could say traditional and modern. There is a little bit of an itch here. But I think what the chart wants us to do is reflect and respect what is it about the traditional, the conservative, the normal path, the existing structure, the slow unfolding path towards mastery and integrity. What does that have to show us? What can we learn from that place? Equally, when I was having a bit of a giggle thinking about this chart, if you are a fan of Seinfeld, as I was and am, there is some episode where, and I can't even remember the context of the episode, where I think George Costanza, he and his dad keep on yelling, "Serenity now!" I feel like this is like integrity now. This is what this chart wants. It wants integrity. You know, Venus next to the sun and the moon, that is about values. And she is firmly in Capricorn with the rest of the team. Sun is the soul. It's the ego and the waking consciousness. Moon is the body and the carrier, the vessel for the soul. Venus is values. So I feel like there's this whole team kind of right in a row with one another. And I think there's a small possibility, because the Saturn is the lunation ruler, the ruler of this chart. Again, the sun and the moon, new moon in Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by planet Saturn. So Saturn, as the ruler of this chart, is somewhat close to Mercury. And Mercury being a communication planet, being about chat, being about commerce, Mercury, trade, even negotiations, writing, communications of all kind. When Saturn and Mercury get together, things can get really solid, or very firm boundaries can be put in place. Sometimes that feels like the four walls are going a little bit closer than we'd like, or it can feel like we are thinking about limits, we are thinking about boundaries, we have to communicate about that. And I also think it's a great moment to make a pact with yourself of some kind, because that's another Mercury-Saturn thing. It's putting one's thoughts into form and into structure. It's a great moment, actually, sometimes for signing contracts, or even for, let's say you're getting married and you need to do your marriage in, civil court. That would be a great time for this. So I think there could be some harsh messages. I think there could be messages that are pretty firm about putting a boundary in place. But what I really, really feel at deepest root is this is about integrity. This is about mastery. This is about realizing that today's world does not value the slow unfolding. Everybody wants to be, have their brand ready tomorrow. I can get a website up in 24 hours. If you spend enough hours on YouTube or in a weekend workshop, YouTube can be anything you want to in a matter of hours. So there is that thing happening in our society. Uranus and Aries has been really pushing that forward, spearheading that movement, what I call the revolution of selfie. This push towards brand, this push towards speed of identity, of changing oneself, of the overhaul, and how technology is a big part of that. My vibe is still tradition wins out here. Old guard wins. Saturn is firmly in Capricorn with the rest of the planets, telling a very, very strong story about what it means to show up and do the work and let that unfold over time. Again, time and experience, the two things neither of us can ever summon at will or push along. So there's a lot of wisdom in this chart. I will leave you guys to spend some time with it. I'll try to link below some images of the chart so you can see them. And that is it, my loves. I will see you in hopefully a week to 10 days. Definitely I'm planning on writing about the full moon lunar eclipse in Leo, which will happen January 31st on this month. And I just wish you all the best till then, you know, and hope that you can really take from this new moon, this new opening of a cycle, this initiation of Saturn, and his transit in Capricorn in your chart and what it's going to mean to you at a really deep level, because the work that he does with us is so important, and above all, he's a very fair teacher. He only wants to teach you the things that are going to bring you closer to alignment with yourself and hopefully set you up for future success. So that's me. I'm Lee Coleman, straightwoo.com. Subscribe if you feel like this was helpful to you, and otherwise I will see you guys on the blog very soon. Lots of love, guys.